Live from the Score Atlanta television studios in North Atlanta, this is Georgia High School Sports Daily, powered by IBEW Local 613.
All right, happy Friday Eve. I'm Najee Wilkins along with Craig Sager for Georgia High School Sports Daily. Another great episode we have in store for you guys today. So we'll be talking to Jeremy Johnson in our second spot of the show today. We'll also preview National Signing Day in segment 3. We'll get into it with, obviously, Robin Hines, former executive GHSA director, but talking about bass fishing and the latest there. And then we'll preview a big-time commitment coming up today on TNT, and that is, obviously, Caleb Wilson, 5-star here in the state of Georgia. Craig, you've obviously seen a lot of basketball over the course of your career. So I do want to ask you, just as we open the show, who are some of the best basketball players you've seen in the course of your career in high school?
Well, starting out, I've told you this before, I was actually on the same basketball team as Jody Meeks back in the day.
Yep.
We played East Marietta basketball, and we knew right away that he was going to go to the NFL. NBA. He was unbelievable. Just give the ball to Jody. So he was one of the first. I actually saw Josh Smith play in high school before he transferred. He was a freshman and sophomore at McEachern. He was incredible. One of the first high school guys where you really saw them being able to throw down incredible dunks. And then in recent years, I thought Autry Gilbert during those Miller Grove teams was just a great high school basketball player. Obviously went on to do great things with Coach White. And then Jaylen Brown for sure at Wheeler. He was such a complete player, and what he did in the state championship game, there's a lot of pressure on him. I forgot who they ended up matching up with, but he was a perfect, I think, 12 of 12 at the foul line in that game. He was able to get to the foul line down the stretch, and we've seen what he's done since then. But he was a special type of talent.
And then speaking of that, I want to ask you just a little bit more about, obviously, Jaylen Brown, Craig. I think a great point. I remember you showing me some some clippings, archives of you actually doing a story on Jaylen back in the day. And I was like, well, no way he went to Wheeler. But, I was only getting acclimated to it. So what about him just made him special? I know you said he had a lot of pressure on him, but fulfilling that pressure and winning a state title. But what made him so special?
Well, Wheeler's such an incredible basketball program. And so whenever you see an individual that's getting that hype from that school, that's leading the team where they know that they really have something special with him, it takes a lot to stand out. That was him. 6'8", can play above the rim, great defense, was basically unguardable, and you saw the potential with him as a guy that he can shoot, but in high school he's so dominant athletically, almost that LeBron in high school where he's just able to dunk on everyone, no one can stop him. But then to see him develop his game, I think that's what made him such a hot prospect, and then just his overall intelligence and then his maturity at the time. That was what really made him different.
100%. And obviously we've seen Caleb Wilson so far this year. We'll preview that, talk more about that later on. But let's go ahead and get to our fast break headlines for today, powered by IBEW Local 613. Craig, I'll let you get it started.
All right, so this is a story that came out recently. Tori Clemens out as Northwest Whitfield girls basketball coach after an investigation. The decision was made following an investigation by the Whitfield County Sheriff's Office. From what I saw in the story by the Dalton Daily Citizen, it looked like she was out after complaints from some parents about her losing her temper in the locker room. They did an investigation and then determined that she was out. The Whitfield County Board of Education's meeting was held on January 6th. Kelly Wade, who identified herself as a parent of the freshman player, spoke of the complaints of the alleged behavior. So they will be looking for a new coach. Pretty rare story to see something like that come out, but hopefully the program and them can settle that after the investigation.
100%. All right, guys. St. Francis girls served Mount Parent's second region loss. A 12-0 run proved to be the difference in the game as they held Mount Parent Christian girls to 58-21 in region play on this past Friday. The run started at the end of the second quarter and rolled into the third as the Knights got contributions from Cam Goldston, Peyton Mann, Desi Taylor to push their lead to 44-29 heading into the final quarter. A layup from Jessica Fields proved to stop the run, and she would go on to score 13 of the Eagles' 14 points in the third quarter. If you guys all know, she's committed to Michigan, is the sister of Justin Fields, who's in the NFL. She would add 12 more points in the fourth quarter to finish with 31 on the night. And this is what Mount Parent head coach had to say. She said, you have a weapon. You know that she could turn it on and could play with anybody in the state. We've played a lot of national teams, and she's doing the same thing. So I feel like she brings confidence and leadership. She did what she needed to do, just needed more offense from everybody else. So obviously a big game for them this past week, and obviously a big win for St. Francis.
Yep, St. Francis swept that. As you saw, the boys won also, but putting up 31 points on St. Francis, I know Mount Perrin lost that game, but it just shows if you're recruiting Jessica Fields at the next level, she just put 31 points on one of the best teams in the state, so a great sign for her. All right, headline number 3, you can go to scoreatl.com to get the exclusive. Alpharetta hires new head coach Brian Landis. This is a big job. We know Alpharetta, they brought in Coach Curvin from Birmingham for about 3 years. They struggled last season defensively. It's a big hire for Coach Landis in that hot spot of recruiting in that North Fulton area. A little about his resume: after finishing his college football at Georgetown College, where he helped lead the Tigers to an NAIA national championship, where he won Defensive Player of the Year. Landis won a second title a year later as a graduate assistant with the program. Landis tried his hand in arena football before going back to Georgetown College to begin his coaching career as an assistant as well as special teams coordinator in 2004. He became the DB coach with the school in 2006 and held onto that position to 2014. He also served as the team's recruiting coordinator beginning in 2010. That is huge. He has those connections with the college and high school level. Being able to get those kids opportunities is a huge appeal. 3 years later, in 2017, he took over as the head coach for Douglas High School in Lexington, Kentucky, where he accumulated a 35-5 record in his 3 seasons. Landis's teams were 14-1, including an appearance in the Class 5A state championship in 2019. In 2020, he accepted a role on Georgia State's football staff on the defensive side of the ball, helped the Panthers rank in the top 10, so he has quite a resume at the college and high school level. Them getting another out-of-state hire to come in is a big deal for sure. Now we'll see him test his coaching ability in Georgia.
100%. All right, guys, our next headline: Cedar Grove has now hired a new coach from Morehouse. That is Rich Freeman, a 5-time former Class 3A football champion, coming off their first losing season in 19 years. They obviously hired him. He was Morehouse head coach for 16 seasons, said Cedar Grove's success and his roots to the area attracted him to the job. Freeman played high school ball at Krim and Atlanta School, 7 miles away from Cedar Grove, which is also located in DeKalb County. He said this via quote, "I'm from Atlanta, born and raised, and most of my fondest memories came from Atlanta and DeKalb County area, and I just know about the history and tradition over at Cedar Grove and how well they've done over the past 20 years. Freeman said there's some fertile ground on the east side in terms of talent. He was the SIAC Coach of the Year after leading Morehouse to a 73 record in 2018. 2011, he led Morehouse to his first NCAA Division II playoff berth. He stepped down after the 2022 season following a 1-9 finish.
Yep, and so you saw that he played high school at Krim. That was where Darren Miles, Carver Atlanta's coach, got his start. That school eventually closed down. What I like about this, though, Cedar Grove, just a couple years ago, they had more players in the NFL than any other high school in the state of Georgia. They obviously had a tough season last year, just replacing all those players from the team. You had KJ reclassifying, lost a quarterback, lost a running back. The talent is there. We see it in track and field. We see it in basketball. It's just about getting a coach there that's going to be able to run the program, maybe like a Darren Miles, where he's very involved in the day-to-day, talking to them in the morning, getting them just bought into the program, and I think it's just a matter of time. But that's a big deal, getting an Atlanta native, someone that's familiar with that area, to come in there. And they've had a lot of coaches turned over the last few years, but certainly the athleticism's there and the pride is.
100%. And obviously our last headline, Redan head coach for track and field, Willie Griffith, will enter Georgia Track Hall of Fame. Longtime Redan High School track coach will be inducted in the Georgia Track and Cross Country Coaches Association Hall of Fame in a ceremony at Parkview High School on Saturday at 12 p.m. this weekend. Griffith is currently in his 19th year coaching track at Redan High School, including a 15-year run with 4 state championships until he retired in 2015. He returned to Redan in 2022 and coaches flag football and track. He said, "It's a great honor to be recognized by my peers in track and field coaching across the state of Georgia." He's a native of Vero Beach, Florida. He's also had Georgia coaching stops at Monroe area, Clark Central, Social Circle, Lamar County during his 36 years as a head track and field coach.
Yeah, and one of the great quotes from that story, he was actually in law enforcement for 10 years, and his old high school track coach convinced him to get back into coaching. He did it, fell in love with it, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. So pretty incredible. And the sport of track and field, just like football, basketball in this state, it is a hotbed, and we're starting to see a lot of these kids from the DeKalb area that have ties to places like Trinidad and Tobago. We saw with the Frederick sisters from Druid Hills last year, with them competing on the national level or international level, seeing a lot of these really superstars coming out of the state of Georgia. And
then speaking of that, obviously you covered track, Craig. Who are you most excited to see this upcoming year as we kind of hit that corner and eventually be in track season?
Well, what's always interesting to me is who is, because it is something where you got to be solid at every event. To see Denmark win the cross country, I think that's huge. And then Marist is going to have a lot of competition now in Class 4A. We know they have the distance runners with Tommy Latham, and they'll be able to get a lot of points in that, but I feel like that's going to be more of an even race than they've had in the past.
100%. So track and field will obviously have that. Baseball, we have a whole bunch of blogs up. I talked about 5A this past week. Who can dethrone Loganville this upcoming year? Pope, Houston County, Lee County, a whole bunch of teams we have out there. Obviously, other great stories. Craig has his blog. We'll have one tomorrow. He did a 6A blog as well. So you guys know where to go. Go to squaretail.com and get the latest there. Coming up, we will have Jeremy Johnson of On 3 to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs and the latest going on with their program.
Great teams are committed, focused on the details, and work hard to be their best. From practice to games, right down to their gear. Your field is a critical part of the game that allows your athletes to showcase their athletic abilities. Sports Turf is committed to bringing your team innovative sports surfaces with unparalleled performance. You bring the vision. Our team brings it to life.
This makes my dad proud. He went through his whole career as an employee. Now I'm the employer, something he didn't achieve.
We are signatory to IBEW and do IBEW people wherever we go that we feel like they are faster and better than any of our competition.
The advantages of being a signatory contractor is you're trained employees. You have unlimited manpower. It allows me to bid on jobs that I ordinarily would not go after.
We celebrate the athletes, the buzzer beaters, the record breakers, the wins. Now, it's time to celebrate the people behind it all. The advice givers, the community shapers, the game changers, the life changers. It's time to celebrate our coaches. Join all of us at BSN Sports and show your coach some love by sharing their story with #ThankYouCoach.
Man, you know how to do this? Man, I don't even know. I was flipping burgers last week.
Violation, unsportsmanlike conduct, impersonating a craftsman.
Skilled trade unions are well-trained career pros, not part-timers. Construction is a rewarding and lucrative career with the advancement potential, but you have to do it the right way with the right training. Learn how you can be a pro. Find your career at GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com.
Georgia High School Sports Daily is brought to you by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 613. Electrify your career.
All right, welcome back to Georgia High School Sports Daily. Najee Wilkes Law with Craig Sager. So let's not waste any more time and bring on one of the best ones we have here in the Peach State, Jeremy Johnson of On 3. He covers Dogs HQ. Jeremy, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. How's everything with you?
I'm good, man. Staying busy, lots of offers flying around, and got the college basketball season in full swing, so staying busy right now.
100%, man. And speaking of, like you said, offers are flying all around. It's a player I want to ask you specifically about. We've had conversations, obviously, off the air, but Kareem Hughley, I mean, he's kind of blown up now, picked up an Illinois' offer. What's your thoughts? What are you hearing about that? And obviously, Georgia extending that offer this past weekend.
Yeah, Georgia's showing him a lot of attention early. Obviously, they can't really talk to him just because he's a young guy, but he's been on campus already a couple times. He went Saturday, got the offer. I know they've showing him that he's a priority early on. He has him high on his list. I mean, I'm sure he'll have, boatloads of other offers here in the next couple months. But, he had a really good sophomore season. And I think the future's, bright for that young man. He's got a lot of talent, big time arm. He can throw on the run. And he's playing for a humongous program that does a lot of, good things as far as development up there.
100%, Jeremy. And then obviously, when we look at this 2026 board, I know Tyler Atkinson is one of the heavy ones from Georgia. I've heard through my sources that Georgia really likes him. But what other guys is Georgia prioritizing in state for 2026?
2026, in state probably be Jordan Edmonds, cornerback from Sprayberry. Man, there's a long list. Xavier Griffin's a guy that they went and saw the other day that is committed to USC, but Georgia's still doing some work there. Local guy from, Bogart, Kamari Brooks, a 4-star edge, a big-time prospect. Kirby Smart was in to see him. I want to say it was Monday night. Kirby Smart was there. Shadira Uzo-Deribe was also there at the game. James Cooley was at the game. He's a big name to know moving forward. Georgia really in good shape there. He's a Georgia legacy, so that's one of the really big ones. Him and Tyler Atkinson. That's probably one of the top of the crop right there in the state of Georgia.
100%. And then obviously, as far as the campus goes, who were some guys that you heard about that was on campus this past weekend? A really important weekend for Georgia.
Obviously Tyler was one that was on campus. It seems like he's there every time that something happens with Georgia. He's there. 2 running backs that were really big, Carson Baker from Langston Hughes and Jay Lamar from Colquitt County. He's become a big target for Georgia. Both of those guys are, I think, huge for the class just because, running back such a big need for Georgia. They missed out on Usmani Kroma last year. Had him committed all the way up until signing day, and then he flipped to Florida State. So, those 2 will be big names to know. Obviously, they had another running back from Texas, Javion Osborne is another name that, may not be familiar to people here in the state of Georgia, but it's a big-time running back out there in Texas that Georgia's really recruited as well. So, yeah, those were some of the guys that I thought that really kind of mattered. Obviously, Kareem Hughley and also they had Damian Guyton on campus, top prospect in the 2027 class. That says a lot when you get younger guys at these junior days. That tells you what the program thinks of those guys.
And Jeremy, you mentioned college basketball real quick. I've seen a lot of excitement this season, particularly with the atmosphere up at Georgia. Looks like a lot of fan support. How big do you think that would be to see the basketball program maybe land some big guys and be able to just make Georgia more appealing for big-time prospects across the board athletically? How much can that help just overall?
Yeah, I think if you start, even if Georgia just stays in state, starts landing some of these guys in state, that turns their program around. They can quickly, it doesn't take long in college basketball to go from a team that's outside of the tournament to a team that's competing for national championships. We've seen Auburn kind of do what Georgia, in theory, could be doing here in the next couple of years with, they got Bruce Pearl in, and then they got a bunch of these guys from Georgia, and then they started winning. And once you start to show that relevance and show that you can, produce NBA players and produce, deep tournament runs, that sells itself, and that goes a long way, moving into the future. So I think Georgia is right there on the doorstep of having an opportunity to be that Alabama, that Auburn on the basketball side of things, where those 2 programs kind of focused on their states in the South in recruiting, and it paid off, and it's been paying off for them. So Georgia needs to win some of these battles with these teams, and it seems like they have people's attention.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to see just during basketball season, some of the football players out in the stands, just really building that excitement. And then another question, just want to ask your take on the Carson Beck deal, all the money he was able to get, just what your thought was on the impact of that.
Yeah, the impact, I think, is, obviously you don't want to, if you're Georgia, you don't want to lose a guy that started, almost 30 games for you, 20-something games for you. So obviously, it's definitely a decision they had to make, but, going into it, now you got Gunnar Stockton that's kind of been waiting his turn, and you got Ryan Puglisi who's been kind of waiting his turn. He's only been there for a year. So, it's obviously a blow, but, obviously Georgia has a lot of talented quarterbacks that they could try to replace Carson with. And, try to move forward. He's going to go down there. He's going to have a chance to put up big numbers, have re-raise his draft stock. I know he probably came into this season expecting to be the number one pick, or at least being a first-round pick, and that he didn't play that way this year. Turnovers and obviously the injury have kind of derailed things. So for him, it's an opportunity to go get a fresh start and go down to Miami in a place where he's probably really comfortable to go and have a good year and try to reestablish himself.
Yep, and then coming up in the draft, Georgia obviously always does a great job. What are you thinking this year, just in terms of how it's going to stack up to some of the previous years with Bulldogs going in some of the early rounds?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of guys go, from Georgia. You got Jalen Walker, a guy that's probably going to be top 15, top 20 picks. Michael Williams has an opportunity to be a first-round pick. Malachi Starks has an opportunity to be a first-round pick. And then you start to get to these second and third and fourth round guys. Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild, even Chaz Chandler, Dan Jackson. All these guys are going to have an opportunity. Trevor Etienne, they'll probably get drafted, within those first four to five rounds. So, they're going to have them. I don't know if they'll get to double digits, but it'll be close, and that's saying a lot to where this program is. Obviously they didn't win a national championship this year, and that's the expectation now for Georgia. It feels like if you don't win a national championship at Georgia right now, it's kind of a failure, and that's because of the talent that's there, and it's going to be shown again this year how much talent was still on this football team this year.
Speaking of talent, Jeremy, let me ask a little bit about this team going into next year, just an outlook. I want to go specifically to this 2025 class at wide receiver that you guys got coming in. Taylor Taylor, C.J. Wiley, Landon Rodon. You guys got some talented guys, but you guys just hit the portal and got some guys too, Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas. How does the outlook for wide receiver look this year for Georgia in your eyes?
Yeah, it's very promising. There's a lot of talent in that room. There's probably as much talent in that room now, today, than there has been, in the last 4 or 5 years at least. Noah Thomas, obviously a big-time guy that's played big-time football at Texas A&M, and he knows how to play, and go up and get the football. He's a big guy. Zachariah Branch is electric. We've all kind of followed him in high school and known what he's been able to do with the football in his time at USC as well. And then you got guys like C.J. Wiley that we've seen a lot of that has dominated 7A for 2 years, and Tylen Taylor, big-time recruit out of the North. But then you got guys like Landon Rolden, Thomas Blackshear, Tyrek Williams, and Jacoby White, Nitro Tuggle that don't necessarily get a lot of the press clippings, but they're really talented football players too that will factor into what happens with Georgia's offense next year.
And then as a two-sided question before we let you go, Jeremy, I want to ask you about just Battle of Miami. You were there this past weekend. Talk a little bit about that, your experience there, and what are some things you plan on attending, here in the near future as kind of 707 season heats up and obviously spring visits and all that?
Yeah, Battle was cool, man. Saw a lot of those guys that are from South Florida that ended up getting offers from Georgia. Trying to think, what's his name? Trey Bell, saw him. He got the offer yesterday. Keyshawn Henderson, it was my first time meeting him, having an opportunity to see him and speak to him. He got the offer from Georgia, I want to say yesterday. I know Coach Mike Bobo was out there in Houston and saw him. He is an impressive football player, one of the better athletes in the country. Not just play quarterback. You line this dude up at receiver or at safety or at corner, he's probably the best player on your team still. But he's a good quarterback. He wants to play quarterback. He's dialed in to play a quarterback, and Georgia offered him to play quarterback. So, that he's committed to Houston. But the fact that Georgia's kind of recruiting that kind of dynamic athlete at the position is something that I don't know that we've seen a lot of since maybe Justin Fields. So, that's got to be intriguing. And I think seeing him for the first time was kind of the highlight of the weekend for me. And when all of the clippings that I had read of him and all the stories I heard about him were all true, he's really special. And that was pretty cool to see. Some of these other guys that I saw, it was like, man, I got to lay eyes on some of these guys I hadn't seen before because I've been around Georgia. I'm around Georgia so regularly. I don't see a lot of these California and Texas guys. There's a lot of really good football players in this country. I'll say that.
100%. Well, Jeremy, that's all the time we got. We appreciate you coming on, man. Love your work and love what you do, man. Keep it up, man, and definitely going to have you back on again.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate y'all. I love the show. Y'all have a good one.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. There goes Jeremy Johnson of Dawes HQ. Coming up, we will preview National Signing Day in our segment 3 and talk about some of the biggest names still unsigned.
Georgia High School Sports Daily is presented by GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com. Transform your future today. And by Smart Local 85. Sheet metal is a smart move.
All right, welcome back to Georgia High School Sports Daily. Najee Wilkins along with Craig Sager. Remember that this show is powered by IBEW Local 613. You can watch the show on Atlanta News First app and also CBS Sports Local streaming app Zeem, and also on the Peachtree Sports Network via YouTube TV. Every day, 12 to 1 o'clock right here. All right, Craig, so previewing National Signing Day, I want to ask you just a little bit about some of the big names still remaining. But let's talk about Jonesboro. They do a great job. I remember when we initially did a signing day special, we had them on. But they're going to have 8 guys signing out of their class. I know Kamari Carter is one of the headliners. He'll be signing in February. What's your thoughts on them as a program as a whole?
Very overlooked. I don't necessarily think they're underrated. We talk about them a lot. They had a great season. Took a share of that region title with Stars Mill. This year was special, and we've heard it for a while. This senior class, they were part of that team 2 years ago. They were getting in that starting lineup, very athletic. I think they still have a lot of talent behind them. I think this year is one of those breakout classes for Jonesboro, what they were able to do. And these are going to be really solid players at the next level that are going to prove to these colleges, once they see them excel at this next level, that what they're doing at Jonesboro is a place where you can go there, get a prospect. They're going to be battle tested. They're going to come from great coaching. I think they'll be ready to go. I was very impressed with both sides of the ball. Impressed with how they played down the stretch in the Stars Mill game that you saw, one of the best games of the season last year. I'm very impressed just with how they're able to handle last season. Didn't really have a bad game, just were really consistent, and that goes into the day-to-day work.
100%. As Craig alluded to, they also played, obviously, Bless Your Trinity in the playoffs, gave them a really good test. Then they had 5 field goals they made in that one and maybe 1 single touchdown. So defense played really well, to Craig's point. So a really good overall year for them. But another player I want to ask Craig about, obviously, is Cambridge quarterback Weston Taylor. He had a really great year. I've seen him throwing some passes to Hudson over the offseason. I know he picked up recently a Savannah State offer, still figuring things out, but that's another pretty good name that's still available currently.
That's right. So we have a couple names we're going to highlight. With him, it's similar to some of these other guys where they completely switched their offense this last year. They bring in Tyler Jones. In the past, Cambridge has always been solid, but they've been more run-oriented. They haven't put up passing numbers like this. Weston Taylor broke every school record in the playoffs against Cedartown. That was the big significant win for them that really was probably one of their best victories in school history against Cedartown. He had 444 yards and 6 touchdowns, obviously a school record right there. He finished 4th in the state in passing. And then when you look at Tyler Jones, he had Jeremy Hecklinski the year before. Jeremy Hecklinski went on to Wake Forest, ended up winning a ton of awards for what he did his senior year. I mean, Weston had games where he showed flashes of that. And I think when you look at what his numbers were in 1 year with Coach Jones, if he had him for 2 seasons, I think he would be way higher on these recruiting boards. But I think with him, you have to look at what he did this year in particular, and that's really where his potential comes out.
100% agree. To Craig's point, obviously, that's a testament not just to Weston Taylor and the work he put in, but also Coach Jones, as he alluded to, with obviously Jeremy Hecklinski and that electric offense getting all the way to a state championship in 2023. We've seen kind of a little bit of a precipitous drop-off. Well, just a little bit offensively compared to this year, compared to what they had before. Obviously lost a lot of guys, but then you've seen that kind of explosion kind of for the program this year for Cambridge, and the offense just looking completely different. Nearly 2 1,000-yard receivers and a great running back in Tyler Blaylock. So to your point, Craig, Coach Jones is doing a great job.
Exactly. And in a game like Cedartown, going into that, they knew, well, no offense, we probably don't have what it takes to line up in the trenches and try to run at Cedartown. We're going to have to beat them through the air. And there were plenty of games like that this year where they put the game on Weston Taylor's shoulders, and he got it done, made the big throws. Obviously, the playoff run they made, they were not far off from potentially making a semifinal. 4A was pretty wide open. A couple of things about him. I've heard some things maybe about the mechanics. He does have sort of a sidearm throw. We saw it with a lot of screen passes. He has an unconventional release, but I still think what he did with 1 season, 4th in the state in passing with all these prolific quarterbacks. I think it's certainly enough, and we see the offers coming up. He's going to land somewhere. It's just a matter of where.
100%. Now let's talk about a big one, Craig. Northside, Warner Robins offensive tackle Chasten Brown, formerly committed to UCF before obviously Gus Malzahn took the job, the offensive coordinator job at Florida State. So he reopened up his recruitment. Still unsigned, currently trending towards a couple different places, but I think that's another big guy. Whoever gets him, that's going to be an underrated get.
Yeah, another guy where it was his first year playing. He was a AAU basketball player, 6'7". He was 240 pounds going into last year. Now he's at 270. He won offensive lineman of the year for his region with all those talented programs. So he's another guy blew up in 1 year, and the potential's off the charts. 6'7", growing into his frame, extreme athleticism, a great base. You aren't going to find a bigger prospect than that.
No, you are not. And another one I'm really surprised about, Craig, is Ware County's Jamar Burden. I mean, I think he does a really good job. 3-star prospect, still off the board. I was talking to his head coach down there at Ware County, and, we're trying to have him on the show for our initial early signing day period. But he said, hey, he's still figuring things out. We're going to kind of wait and hold it off. So that's another prospect. I mean, when you look at him, you look at his tape, you look at his pictures, huge guy with great size, speed, athleticism, length, but still out there.
Yeah, he's got the gifts. He's about 6'2", 230. He's been at that playing weight. Just your prototypical edge. That's such a valuable position, though. He's got to make sure he goes to the right spot. Does he want to play early? He's had some visits recently, but he's looking at, Florida State, Alabama, all sorts of big-time programs.
Now, another one, Craig, I know you'll like this one. Obviously, we had Jeremy on just now. He talked about Thomas Blackshear, who's obviously going to Georgia. But another name, Edward Coleman, had a really great season, obviously, for Calvary Day. 46 catches this past year, over 800-plus yards receiving, and I think he had 11 touchdowns this year. So another guy, Craig, out there on the board. Hearing some buzz about Florida State being in there, Bama potentially. Be interested to see where he lands. Yeah,
he's a very unique prospect. He used to play running back and receiver. He got hurt his junior year, missed a lot of time, but is really able to do a lot. And he's got like a 5'10", 195 pounds. So he's got physicality where he's very dangerous with the ball in his hands. He reminds me of some of these compact running backs or slot guys you'd see at a program like Boise State. Very dangerous with the ball in his hands, and even with missing some games with the injury, the body of work is coming from a great program, and he has a chance for sure to make a decision coming up.
100%. Other big names out there, Carrollton Edge, Zion Cooley. He obviously had a great one this year for the Trojans as they made it to the state championship. You got Perry safety Devin Smoot. He was another outstanding player. 12 offers. Mason McKnight of Northgate, formerly committed to Georgia Southern. He is still out there as well as Stockbridge offensive lineman Xavier Spikes. So those are the names. That's the preview of National Sunday. Remember, we will have our signing day that Wednesday, February 5th, right here on Peachtree Sports Network, a 3-hour special from 12 to 3 o'clock. So make sure you stay tuned for that. All right, coming up, Robin and Hines. Let's talk a little bit about bass fishing and the latest around the sport.
We celebrate the athletes, the buzzer beaters, the record breakers, the wins. Now, it's time to celebrate the people behind it all. The advice givers, the community shapers, the game changers, the life changers. It's time to celebrate our coaches. Join all of us at BSN Sports and show your coach some love by sharing their story with #ThankYouCoach.
Dang, where you get this car?
You need to join the union.
The union?
Absolutely. You can get 10 of these.
Union construction workers earn the highest wages with the best benefits and the most protection in the construction industry. Find your career in construction. Go to GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com and start your future today.
A journeyman with Local 85, when you turn out, you can be hitting 6 figures.
Hey, I have your back, you have my back. We're gonna do this together. We're one for all for one.
College just wasn't for me. Let's look into actual career jobs that wouldn't take college, where I wouldn't, lose money and all that. Instead of losing a lot more money at the end, why not make money and make more money at the end?
What happens after you graduate? Will you go to the next level? Will people have your back in the heat of the battle? Will you still train like a champion in pursuit of greatness? You will when you become an IBEW electrician. Join our team. Visit IBEW613.org.
All right, welcome back to Georgia High School Sports Daily. Najee Wilkins along with Craig Sager. So without further ado, we're going to talk to Robert Hines, the former GHSA Executive Director. He is in charge of bass fishing, so let's get the latest there. Hey, Coach Hines, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. Hope you guys are.
Yes, sir. Of course, whenever we're talking to you, we're always good.
Good. Well, it's good. The feeling is mutual.
Yes,
How
sir.
You,
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Hines, I want to ask you a little bit just about kind of the growth a little bit of the bass fishing. We're seeing more kids get involved. I know obviously they have to have the rosters and everything in November. Let's talk about the growth of the sport and more eyes getting on it and just more people wanting to participate.
Well, you know, bass fishing is something that we put in. I can't remember the exact time, you know, but we included that and sanctioned it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Kevin Giddens, you know, our associate director, who's just great and put this whole thing together. You know, Kevin passed away last year. We miss him very much. He's the one that built this, and this is the strongest bass fishing program in the country. You know, we average over 250 boats per qualifier, and that's because of his work and what he put into it. And there's a lot of people that are involved. You know, we partner with the Bass Federation and the Student Angler Federation, which is part of that, you know, as well as Major League Fishing. And, you know, those guys do a super job, and it's a multi-sided thing. You know, they take care of the registration and get the kids and teams registered, and then we handle the academic and the GHSA side and all that, and we just work together to put it on. And our first tournament was supposed to be on Saturday, which unfortunately, because of the weather and the winter storm, just out of an abundance of caution, we had to cancel this time. And of course, we can get into how we're going to handle those qualifiers and how that's going to work. But you know, little rough start. Had some crazy weather that's happened. You know, I came down yesterday to take a look. I have a brother that lives in the area and could spend a couple of days with him and get a firsthand look, you know, and it was really odd coming down south, you know, leaving Columbus. I came from Hartwell all the way down, and as we got further south, it got colder and more snow and more ice as it went, and you know, safety has got to be our top priority, and so we had to make the call to make sure that all of the anglers and those teams, you know, didn't make the trip and were able to cancel their lodging accommodations and those sorts of things, and that's kind of where we are today.
Yes, sir. And then speaking of that, obviously, as you said, Lake Seminole is obviously canceled. So what are the next steps for you, Mr. Hines, as far as are you going to schedule another qualifier, or will you just go to the qualifier 2? Kind of how does that work for you?
It'll go to 2. I mean, you know, the permitting process and being able to do and pull something like that, it takes a long time to pull those things together. Mm-hmm. You know, Kevin Hunt and with Major League Fishing and Joey Bray with the Student Angler Federation do a great job with that. And so our next one, I believe it's February the 7th at Lake Oconee. And the way we'll handle that, you know, the top 15 teams in each qualifier move on. And then if over 100 boats, you know, there are every 10 boats, there's another qualifier. So there can be, you know, 25 or 30 qualifiers there. So what we will do is for those teams in the Seminole tournament that were registered and participating in the Seminole tournament, they will have the opportunity to pick up those slots through competition in the next 3, okay? And there's no double qualifiers, so we'll still have over 100 boats, you know, there for our state championships, which will be held at Lake Lanier this year.
Yes, sir. And then last one before I throw it to Craig, I do want to ask you about, obviously, you talked about it early on, Kevin Giddens and what he meant, obviously, to the sport, but you guys dedicated the whole season to him. You obviously helped put this together. So what would it mean just, you know, being able to conclude the season, Lake Lanier, obviously dedicating the year to him?
Well, I can tell you, I don't talk with anyone associated with bass fishing in the state of Georgia that doesn't mention Kevin and understand what he meant to us. And really not just that, I mean, yeah, the way he handled football, the way he was just a great employee for GHSA. And for me, more importantly, you know, I didn't have a better friend. He just brought that passion to everything that he did, and it means everything. And you know, and it was only appropriate, you know, that we do dedicate this season to him. And Major League Fishing and the Bass Federation, they were the ones that, I mean, as soon as I had my first conversation with them, you know, that's what they wanted to do, and that's what we wanted to do as well. And I'm just trying to, you know, I stepped in. We want to make sure that what Kevin built continues to thrive and grow.
And then, in terms of Lake Seminole, that's in southwest Georgia, near the Florida line. Obviously, this storm was pretty unprecedented. They normally don't get freezing temperatures and snow. When did you guys decide to call this one off? And was anyone talking about the fact that maybe the fish wouldn't have been biting if it's freezing temperatures? That would have made it pretty difficult.
They still have to eat, Craig. Yeah. You know, so no, you know, it is going to be cold. The weather's getting progressively better, but there's going to be freezing temperatures for the next few days when we start. And just to take that risk, you know, was kind of difficult. And as I said, I'm here with my brother in Quincy, Florida, which is, you know, 35 miles south. It got progressively worse coming here into Quincy. You know, I-10 is still shut down here and that sort of thing. So it just made sense for us to do that. And plus, you know, starting out when it's about 20 degrees in the morning, that's a cold tournament to fish and everything. No, I hadn't had any real complaints about that going, but we did have over 200 boats that were to be here. And just like I say, for the travel and the accommodations, you know, the lodging and, you know, being able to get that taken care of in a time we had to pull that trigger. And there are going to be a lot of school districts along South Georgia that are closed. I'm not sure about what Bainbridge is as to where the tournament basically is located. They're making a decision of today. But when you get off the main roads and all, it's still pretty thick, snowy, and icy back there.
Certainly. And you mentioned Bainbridge, where that first one is. Bainbridge has actually been one of the top programs we've seen in the sport so far. I think they've won 2 of them with their Bearcats. In terms of these next 3 qualifiers, do you expect one of them to have more participants than the others? And how hard is that getting people that have their boats at Lake Seminole and getting them to lodge and be able to have success at these other venues?
Well, you know, the way it works, there's 4 separate qualifiers, if I understand the question correctly, and there are 4 different registrations. Okay, they register overall, you know, so that they have the insurance and all that through the Bass Federation and Major League Fishing, you know, those sorts of things. But and that happens in November. Okay, and we can have some flexibility for rosters adding and losing and that sort of thing. And then there are individual registrations for each of the qualifiers. So all of those boats that qualified, you can participate in all 4 qualifiers if you'd like, but you're not going to qualify at one and then hold another spot for another. You know, when you qualify the first time, you know, that's where you qualify, and all the other slots are open for others. So, you know, it's about inclusion and including as many people as we can to have a manageable state championship.
Gotcha. And then what about moving back to Lake Lanier this year? Obviously, it's a pretty busy, high-traffic area. What about that makes it a good site for the state championships?
Well, you know, that's kind of left up to the Federation and Major League Fishing, and they do, and they're going to move around. You know, well, I don't know if you know or not, but recently, you know, my wife and I, we moved on Lake Hartwell. and I was kind of all excited. I could do one from home, but we're not doing Lake Hartwell this year. We'll be going over to Lake Lanier for the finals, and those things just kind of rotate in, and how they're figured out, I guess, comes with the time and the availability and what else is going on at that particular time. But Lake Lanier is going to be a great venue for us, and have the state championship there. I think it was at Clark's Hill last year, which has a qualifier. So we're just excited, and it won't take long. I mean, I'm disappointed about this weekend, but February 7th will be right around the corner, and we'll be there at Lake Oconee ready to go.
Yes, sir. Well, Hines, we thank you so much for just coming on and talking a little bit about bass fishing and the latest going on there, giving us updates about the qualifiers and talking about that great sport.
Good deal. Thank you all for having us, and thank you for what you do for high school athletics in the state of Georgia. It's the best anywhere, and you guys are too.
Thank you. Obviously, guys, a great Robin Hines right there, former GHSA Executive Director. Coming up, we will preview Caleb Wilson's commitment. Will it be UNC, Kentucky, or Ohio State? All right, welcome back to Georgia High School Sports Daily. Nigel Wilkes Law with Craig Sager. So now we're going to preview one of the biggest commitments in the state. Caleb Wilson is making his decision tonight between UNC, Kentucky, and Ohio State. Really, it's between UNC and Kentucky. He's kind of narrowed down that list, but we'll be announcing it on TNT, obviously with sure Charles, Ernie, Shaq, Kenny, and talking about it with them after the Celtics game tonight. So I'm excited for this one, man. I think this is an instant play kind of a guy. Every time I've seen him, Craig, he's gotten better. I've seen him on the EYBL circuit. I've seen him with Holly Innocence. And I've always been impressed with what he's been able to do. And what's so cool he affects the game with not having to score all the time, right? A defensive menace, right? He can rebound the basketball at a high level, but he also can score and set up his teammates. But from you, what have you seen from his play?
Yeah, well, the great thing about him, he's playing for a team in Holy Innocents. They've never won a basketball state championship. So we've had a lot of 5-star, 4-star guys that are at the programs like McEachern, Wheeler. We've seen it at Kell recently. But this is going to be exceptional to watch him in the playoffs this year. He's had such a great run for Holy Innocents. He's stayed with this team. He's a superstar. He's familiar with these guys around him. But this year, you're right. It's not about him trying to go out there and score 30 points a game. He's averaging nearly 15 rebounds. Routinely, he'll have 8, 7 assists in a game. He's not shooting the ball from 3 as much this year, but he's getting to the foul line. He's very efficient with his touches this year. I think that's the big thing. We haven't seen him have to really put the team on his back and try to be the prolific scorer. It's more of a system-based team this year, and that's what's going to be really exciting. I think they have a chance to win a state title, but also this is just such a big opportunity for a basketball recruit in the state of Georgia to make his announcement on national TV. We've seen it with football a lot, but normally these guys have their destination picked out. This is just a good way of putting Georgia on the map, getting people excited about him, and also setting the storyline on him trying to give Holy Innocents their first ever state title this year.
100%. And speaking of, a more recent example would be AJ DeBonsta, obviously 2025 class, but he's all the way out in Utah. But he announced his decision to go to BYU on First Take, so he was one of the more recent examples. But like you said, haven't really seen that on a national audience or a national kind of platform with a Georgia recruit. So that obviously shows how big time Caleb Wilson is. And we talked about him this week. Big time performance, 18 points, 10 rebounds, 8 blocks, and a win obviously over Kip Atlanta. He also secured another career milestone, recording his 1,000th career rebound for him. He's also a McDonald's All-American Game nominee, so he's in contention for that. He's also a Naismith Player of the Year watch list as well. So, I mean, he's in all the accolades. I think what's interesting is between the decision, right? Are you going to go with Amari Bynum and Dorian Jones at UNC, kind of make your name there? Or will you join and have a 3-headed monster with Kentucky when you look at a Caden Lewis and a Jasper Johnson who's at OTE, 2 elite guys? Really can't go wrong with either one of those.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. Obviously, 2 of the best. It will be interesting. So you see it as, does he enter Kentucky, play on maybe a superstar, a big 3 situation?
Yes.
Or try to go and be the guy at UNC?
Yeah, I feel like that would be the case because they're going to lose their guard. Obviously, they've had great guards, R.J. Davis. When we look at Kentucky, they're already trending upwards. Mark Pope has had a pretty good year 1. Still figuring things out. Recently took a loss, obviously, to Auburn in Rupp Arena. But you look at the landscape of that team, how they're using the portal, and the recruits that they're bringing in, that could be a dangerous team next year and probably one of the top ones in college basketball. Because you got to think about this. He goes to UNC. It's going to likely be him. Guess who he's going to go against? He's going to go against the Boozer twins. They're both committed to Duke. Yep. They have a top class coming in as well, likely with Cooper Flagg leaving and a couple other guys. Obviously, that'd be great for the Duke-UNC rivalry, but when you look at Kentucky, you got a potential chance to win a national championship, I think.
Yeah, and just back to his skill set, he's a legit 6'10".
Yeah.
And we haven't seen prospects like that, guys that can shoot with that size. I mean, he's obviously very special. He's number 1 power forward in the game. He's got the size to be a prolific rebounder, but I just think his overall athleticism, the defense, and his ability to play well with others, it is going to be one of the top prospects to come through the state that I've seen for sure. And I'm just excited to see him make this decision with about a month left and then see what he can do in the playoffs.
100%. Another thing I want to point out, too, Craig, when we talk about Holy Innocents, he could have left, right? He could have went to another big-time private school. He could have played on another campus. He could have went to OTE. We decided to stay, right? They were right on the precipice of winning it all last year. Remember, they played against North Oconee, their first ever state championship. Came up a little bit short. But this year, to your point, Craig, it seems like the team is better developed around him. Kingston Whitty, obviously, Devin Hutcherson, Caleb. It seems like this team is better around him to compete. And think about this. Last week, 61-57 lost to St. Joseph, one of the top teams in the country. We look at Tudin Yusufov, who's going, obviously, to Baylor. They still were able to compete at a high-end level.
Yeah, they're absolutely dominating the competition, cruising in their respective classification. Big-time matchup coming up on Saturday with Grayson.
100%. We'll get to see where they're at. So that is the preview of Caleb Wilson's decision. Again, it'll be on TNT. I'm sure we'll have a reaction and a headline tomorrow where he officially commits on the show in our first segment tomorrow at noon. So definitely stay tuned for that. But super excited to see Caleb Wilson go on to the next place. I remember seeing him as a young sophomore, and he's only gotten better and better every time I've seen him. So he's going to be an exciting prospect to follow over the coming years. And he could be a top prospect when you look at the NBA draft that following year, similar to what we're seeing right now with Ace Bailey, who just went off, played for McEachern here locally in Georgia, and he's considered a top 5 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. But guys, it's going to do it for today. We appreciate you tuning in to another episode of Georgia High School Sports Daily. We'll see you again same time right here on the Peachtree Sports Network from noon to 1 p.m.
Hey, is the power off on this?
I don't know. Just take it off. Safety violation, unsafe work conditions.
In the construction trades unions, safety is our highest priority, and we train you to recognize and speak out on unsafe working conditions so that everyone arrives and goes home safely. Learn about careers in construction at georgiaconstructioncareers.com.
Beginning the morning you opened your eyes, we spent every waking moment preparing you for the day you'd leave our nest. Whether it's driving to practice or helping with homework, it's all prepared you for, what am I going to be when I grow up? Will you be ready?
After much thought, I made my decision to take my talents to the IBEW Local 613.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is not simply a job, it's a career. Visit IBEW613.org to begin a new future today.
We celebrate the athletes, the buzzer beaters, the record breakers, the wins. Now, it's time to celebrate the people behind it all. The advice givers, the community shapers, the game changers, the life changers. It's time to celebrate our coaches. Join all of us at BSN Sports and show your coach some love by sharing their story with #ThankYouCoach.
Are you interested in becoming a deputy or a jailer? The Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office is hiring and looking for individuals passionate about protecting and serving their community. If you are 18 years or older, join our team by visiting